I never really understood what drove my parents to move into some remote small town. No, it's not even a town. Too small, but also too big to be a village. Growing up, I often wished we would have just stayed in Vienna, where my parents were born. They probably imagined some rural paradise when they decided to move to the countryside in Bavaria. What they got instead was an ugly house on a run-down street next to an endless patch of grass and cornfields. It is not a pretty place, and for us children it was also kind of boring. There was no park or playground or anything, so instead we just met at the forest at the edge of town to hang out. It was not too far from any of us, so we could meet there regularly. At first it was just me, Michael, and Florian. But over the years a few other kids had joined too. The forest was pretty big, so for us children there was always something to do. However, there was one part that we avoided as much as possible. There was an abandoned building deep in the woods. I am not sure how old it was, but definitely old. It was a big gray block with a few structures surrounding it, and the spookiest thing around, it was always locked, and probably for the better. Now the building was not a secret. Everyone knew about it. There were claims that the place was haunted. Apparently one could hear screams from there at night. Some teenagers even claimed that they found blood next to the front door, and so we stayed far away. One day our class made a trip to the city hall, where I asked the Major Wagner about it. "Oh yeah, that's an old warehouse." He laughed. "Unabandoned since the 50s, I believe." He got a bit more serious and said, "Don't go there, kids. It's a dangerous place full of old and rusty stuff." The Major then smiled, and we moved on. I wish we had listened, but the older we got the more absurd we found our fears. It was an old ugly building. Not even ghosts would want to live there. The beginning of summer 2011. I was about 12 years old. My parents had just picked me up from school. I would not be going there for 2 months. However, I did have plans for that day. Me and my friends wanted to camp in the forest. We planned to stay up all night, but we brought sleeping bags and tents anyway. I was responsible for food. I brought candy, snacks, and even some apple slices and grapes. In the late afternoon, I made my way into the forest. Most of the other kids were already there. Florian was still missing. With him we would be 6. "Max, you are finally here," Sophie shouted from afar. She sat at a small table with Zoe. "What did you bring?" I opened my backpack and brought out the snacks. A few seconds later I was swarmed by everyone. "Hey, thanks Max." Michael took a few chocolate bars for us, and we sat down on a little rock. "So you think we will make it through the night?" I asked. "Yeah, sure hope so. The one who falls asleep first gets thrown into the creek." He laughed. "We made this rule a while ago. We wouldn't actually have done that, but it was a good motivator for staying awake." We played a few games, ate way too much candy, and argued over the music. About 3 hours later, we had turned off the radio, and we were all sitting in Tobias's tent deciding on what to do next. Zoe wanted to play Truth or Dare, but I hated that game. With middle schoolers it always ends the same stupid ways, unfortunately for me. And soon everyone else I was outvoted, and so it began. As time went on we got bolder as we tried to outplay each other. You might have already guessed where this will eventually lead to. And yes, at some point, it must have been nearly midnight, Michael dared Florian to go to the old building. "There is absolutely no way I'm doing that," Florian protested. "Oh come on, we will go with you. We just go up there and then leave." Michael tried to be convincing. "Yeah, let's go. Stop being a baby. It's not like there is anything there anyway." Tobias, who had gotten bored of the game anyway, was excited. "I'm not so sure about this either. Let's just stay here." Zoe was unfortunately the only other reasonable kid there, and peer pressure won the night. The building was not that far away, maybe a kilometer. Still, walking through mostly dense forest isn't all that easy. For a while we could follow the creek, then we could go through relatively open patches of spruce trees. After that we had to climb up a hill. I was the first to reach the top. I looked directly at the building, or at least into that direction. Still too many trees in the way, but I did see something. "Guys, I think there are lights over there." "Where?" Florian sat down next to me. "Oh yeah, maybe just the reflection of the moon." We accepted this answer and moved on. Then we had to walk through a denser part of the forest with many bushes and branches. After a while, Tobias stopped moving. Did anyone else hear that? We got quiet and listened. "What did you hear?" Sophie whispered. I think I heard someone shout. Tobias answered, "Now you are just making up stuff to scare us," Florian said while jumping over another branch. "I think he is the one getting scared." Michael giggled. "A nut." Tobias walked past everyone heading further, but as we got closer to the building, the more we heard. There was something going on over there. It's late at night, and it's cold. We are imagining things. We should just go back and get some sleep. So we said after we all agreed that we definitely heard someone this time. However, I disagreed. But we have already gotten this far, so we might as well check out what's going on. Probably just some other kids anyway. Sophie grinned and picked up a small rock. "Yeah, let's ambush them from behind." We had been walking for maybe 15 minutes. When we reached the building, we climbed up the little hill where we saw it. I had never been this close. To our shock, we really did see lights through the old windows. And were there people inside? "What's going on here?" Tobias asked. "No idea. But I have the feeling I don't want to know," Zoe said. I too was slowly convinced that coming here was a bad idea. For a while, however, we kept hidden in the bushes and watched. The windows were blurry and hard to see through. We could hear voices, but not what they were saying. A bit further to the right was a little track in the grass with a truck on it. It looked somewhat like the ones the army uses. "What is the military doing here? Are those soldiers?" Zoe asked while slowly standing up. "Get down," Michael yelled at her. A rusty metal door slowly opened, and 2 men came out. They wore black clothes and had guns. "Guys, I think we should go," Florian pleaded. "Please." "Yeah, I agree, let's get out of here." At this point, we could all agree with that, even Tobias. In the meantime, the 2 men began to talk. At least this one didn't scream so much. "Yeah, I think he was dead already at that point." The other laughed. This brief yet terrifying conversation stopped us once again. "They are probably talking about something different," Michael said nervously. "I don't care, let's go," Zoe shouted while nearly slipping. "Did you hear that?" One of the men said. "Hey, who is there? Show yourself." The 2 began walking up the hill on the other side. "Run," Tobias whispered, and we ran into the trees. The men reached the top of the hill. "Get out." Then we heard a loud bang. Fortunately, it was dark, and they couldn't see where we were. We ducked ourselves in a patch of grass behind a few trees. The men ran into our direction. "Did they just shoot at us?" Zoe asked while shivering in her entire body. Tobias put his hand in front of her mouth. "We have to get them. If they escape, we are screwed." The men came closer and closer. "At least we won't have to wait for new bodies tomorrow." Florian began to cry quietly. "I want to go home." "We will. Keep quiet," Tobias ordered in a fake calmness. Now one of them came so close he would have seen us if he looked into our direction. "Now or never." "Run," Tobias said while jumping up and grabbing Florian and Sophie, who in turn dragged me, Michael, and Zoe along. There they are. Another shot. We just ran and ran without looking back. We ran straight through bushes and branches. The men kept following us. However, we did have the advantage that we knew this forest. After a while, we couldn't hear them anymore. We stopped running and sat down near a massive oak tree. Zoe nearly collapsed of exhaustion, but Sophie caught her. "Hey, stay awake. Stay awake." "I am awake, Max." Michael pointed at my foot in shock. There was a massive gunshot wound behind my knee. Only then did I notice the immense pain. "Oh damn." Tobias put his hand on the wound. "What do we do?" I don't know," Michael stuttered. "Take off your shirt," Tobias told me. I gave it to him and he wrapped it around my leg. "That should hold for now. Come on." He helped me up and we started walking. Our camp wasn't far anymore. After a while, I started freezing, so Michael gave me his shirt. It didn't help much, however. Tears started to blur my eyes. "Come on, Max. You can do this. We aren't far anymore." Tobias's encouraging words did not help much. After a while, we finally arrived at our camp. We could not be more relieved. But we were not alone there. "There you are. I have been looking all over the place for you." It was Major Wagner. We were surprised, but also glad. "What are you doing here?" Sophie asked. "Your parents called the police. They said they didn't know where you were. Luckily, I was nearby." He then pointed for us to get into his car. "Did you guys not tell your parents what we were doing today?" Zoe asked as she went along. "No, I did," I said. "Yeah, me too." "Who called you?" Florian asked the major. "Doesn't matter. Get into the car," he shouted angrily. "Actually, it does matter," Tobias responded. "We don't have time for this. Get in the car." "Who called you?" Tobias asked again. "Alright, that's it." The Major took out a small pistol and pointed it at us. "Is it bring your gun into the forest day, or what?" Sophie shouted. "Shut up and get in." The Major yelled. "Okay, fine. Chill, we are going." Tobias held up his arms, letting me go for the first time since we noticed I was shot. I nearly fell down as I had to jump on one leg. Tobias went up to the Major and stood there facing towards us. "Guys, come on," as the others slowly followed. Tobias stayed where he was. "Faster," the Major yelled again. I wasn't as fast as the others, so I was a bit behind. But as they reached the car, Tobias grabbed the Major's arm and yelled, "Now!" Michael and Florin jumped on the Major, and Sophie ripped his gun out of his hands. The Major fell back and Sophie pointed the gun at him. "Max, quick!" Michael ran up to me to help me as the others got into the car. "Leave him," Tobias shouted at Sophie. We all got into the car, and Tobias started. The Major was cursing outside. "Do you know how to drive?" Zoe asked, and Tobias shook his head. We nearly ran over the Major, and I don't think that was an accident. Then we drove off. We came to the main street and drove to Tobias's home. Once there, he told his parents everything, and his parents called the police. We never went back to the forest or our base. We didn't even clean up. I mean, I was in the hospital anyway. The police never told us who shot at us or what was going on in that building. Instead, they told us that we were not allowed to tell anyone what happened. The building itself was demolished just a year after, and the Major hasn't been seen ever since that night. Even now, I wish I knew what was really going on, but we have given up hope at this point. Even after all these years, I still had the urge to tell someone. Maybe this is the right place.